So, a very warm welcome, Mr. Wollen.
Thank you.
We are very pleased to have you on our show.
I'm very pleased to be with you.
Great, thank you. So, the first question which comes to my mind, and a person like you who has been such an accomplished corporate leader, what made you shift towards sustainability, kindness, animal rights? So, where did that shift happen?
Well, in my 30s, I was an investment banker, a merchant banker, specializing in corporate finance,
Mhm.
mergers, acquisitions, and takeovers. I was a vice president of Citibank. And in the course of my travels, I'd seen so much cruelty and corruption and violence, I guess, that I decided that I had to do something in my own small way to alleviate the suffering of those who are most powerless. And I decided to take all the money I'd ever made, such that it was, and give it away with warm hands and die broke. And I often confess, so far we're right on budget. So today we support about 500 projects in about 40 countries, of which about 55 are in India, starting up north as far as Chandigarh and going all the way down to Mysore. So fundamentally what I do is I help organizations on the ground I call them the five fingers: children, animals, the environment, the terminally ill, and aspiring youth. So they're the general five fingers where I spend most of my attention.
Great, that's wonderful. That's a really philanthropic deed. And 55 projects in India. Wonderful.
Yes. Yes.
So, I wanted to also understand from you because you have already evaluated these concepts, and the world is still trying to form a notion about how sustainability and veganism is connected. I am myself a vegetarian. For me, it is not that easy to understand that how that shift can happen. But I'm sure that you have seen both sides of the world. So, how do you think the two correlate?
Yes, no, I do understand the question. There was a time when my favorite food was filet mignon and lobster, a fact for which I'm so profoundly ashamed today. But when I'm often asked about sustainability, I do think that it's a rather trite question. It depends on what you mean by sustainable. Um, let's accept one fact that the human species is not sustainable. That is an absolute fact. It's unassailable. Let's just understand that the planet, our system, our solar system is halfway through its life cycle. As the great man, Dr. Rees, who was called the Astronomer Royal, he says that our sun, for example, is halfway through her life. So the creature that witnesses the demise of the sun will be as different from us as we are from bacteria. Now that is quite an arresting thought. So we as a species will not survive. Now to make it a lot simpler for everyone to understand, most people think that sustainability is carrying on like we are today. Well, for others it is my business sustainable? Is our product life cycle sustainable? Is our lifestyle sustainable?
Right.
And it depends on who you ask. If you talk to somebody in the United States, sustainability for them is to still be able to have two cars in the garage, a house, and go on holidays. To somebody in sub-Saharan Africa, sustainability is having a couple of meals a day and giving an education, even if it's a poor one, to their children. So sustainability means different things to different people. The other question I often have to think about and wrestle with is, let's assume that sustainability for the species does exist. Do we actually deserve to be sustainable? And that's a deeper question. Now, in human history, only 100 billion human beings have ever lived. 7.5 billion people are alive today. And we humans torture and kill 2 billion sentient, living, loving animals every week. We stab and suffocate 1 billion ocean animals every 8 hours. 10,000 entire species are wiped out every year because of the actions of one species. And we now face the 6th mass extinction in cosmological history. If any other organism had done this, a biologist would call it a virus. It is a crime of unimaginable proportions.
Absolutely.
By 2048, all our fisheries will be dead, the lungs and the arteries of the earth. And oceans sequester more CO2 than all the forests of the world put together.
Oh, is it? Okay.
So if any of these facts or these algorithms are true, and they all are, it means that no child under the age of 5 is ever going to reach retirement age. If that does not chill your blood. So when we talk about sustainability, it sounds good when it comes from a big NGO with big sustainability goals.
Right.
But let's at least identify the elephant in the room. Do we deserve to be sustainable? What does sustainability really mean? And does sustainability only apply to this tiny little biped mammalian mammal with an opposable thumb? Is that the only metric we use? Well, I'm here to say, no, it's not. If our species was wiped out, the planet would go on and do just fine. In fact, would do a lot better. So let's not get too precious with ourselves. 96% of the biomass of all terrestrial animals on the planet are destined for the slaughterhouse to feed us. 4% of all the terrestrial land animals on the world are wild. Now, isn't that a crime of unimaginable proportions too? So my question is, sure, let's try to be sustainable to the best of our ability, but let's also try to be compassionate, caring responsibilities for all the other stakeholders who happen to live on this planet with us. And that's fundamentally where I'm coming from.
Great. It's a great thought. And the statistics that you just presented, they are just alarming. I mean, why do we not talk about these when generally the sustainability discussions happen? Most of the conversations are around either water efficiency or energy efficiency, or no, trying to do something with waste management. So of course, all of these are interrelated, and of course, these are having impact on the marine life or the life on the, I mean, terrestrial animals as well. But why the focus is not on the proportions, that what we consume, what we eat, because that is one area, I don't know, for whatever reasons, people just shy away from even discussing that. So,
Yes, that's absolutely true. There's a massive disconnect. And I think people generally are very happy to come up with big macro solutions which involve other people doing things like
right,
hydroelectric power, nuclear power,
correct,
coal-fired power stations. Um, Now, I speak to audiences all around the world. Sometimes it's just a couple of hundred people, and sometimes it's 5,000. And they're all good, decent, caring, loving people who all genuinely want to change the world, as long as they don't have to change themselves.
they cannot.
Life doesn't work that way. First, we change in our hearts, and then the world follows. And the reason why we refuse to contemplate the reality of what happens in these ghastly gulags we call slaughterhouses is because it affects us in a very visceral sort of way. Our ideas of when we were children and babies in our mother's arms, our parents gave us comfort food to make us feel good, and that's how we were brought up. And we thought eating meat and consuming dairy was the right and proper thing to do. And now when we come along and say, well, actually, it's a profoundly immoral and cruel and disgusting and vile and squalid practice,
Right.
we're attacking the very foundations of what they consider a civilized life. So as a consequence, they know what we're saying is true, but it's a lot easier to deflect and go back to talking about coal-powered power stations and transportation and cleaning up the garbage in the streets. They're important things too. But let's not forget that elephant in the room, and that is what we're doing with agriculture. That is the fundamental key, if you like.
So I'll be presenting some of the facts, which I'm personally a vegetarian, as I just said. So whenever I have been trying to convince my friends and people in my circle that why this makes more sense, I was always presented with facts like what will happen to so many animals, and we don't have as much, agri product to support this kind of population. So, how do we justify that?
Well, for a start, we tell them it's certainly not a fact. It's absolute nonsense. It is utter drivel. The animals that we have are not going to multiply and squeeze us off the planet. Most of the animals in existence today are in factory farms and in cages. We are impregnating them, caging them. Animals that we have are installed onto rape racks so we can impregnate them and force this vicious and nasty cycle to continue. Tell me one species of animal that is actually prospering and growing in numbers every year, apart from the human species, apart from the animals that we're producing in factory farms and slaughterhouses.
Right.
I mean, that is a nonsense argument, and it's the last bastion of sloppy minds.
So that doesn't really make any sense because we are trying to grow them for our consumption, and then we are saying that if we don't consume, how will we manage their population? So
Exactly.
it's a
Let's blame the
self-defeating
victim all
argument.
over again.
Right.
And of course, in the process, we're growing such a lot of grain and fodder for these animals that could be diverted to human consumption, and that is where the economics are so overwhelming. It really is a crime that our education system allows this sort of nonsense to still be peddled by the meat and dairy lobby.
Right, right. In fact, in the school textbooks, it is still said that human beings by nature are meant to be omnivorous. They are supposed to eat both. So that gives them, a legitimate reason that why they should go for more than agri products. I'm just trying to justify that why veganism is not being adopted and accepted because in the fundamentals in the education system itself, it says that human beings are omnivorous. Then to have a balanced food, balanced diet, this kind of nutrition you need, and these nutrients can be found in, say, red meat or say poultry or things like that. So the fundamentals itself are to be questioned. So how do we, bring about a change in that?
Well, we confront them with the facts to say, have a look at the mouth of a human being, and then compare it with a genuine carnivore like a tiger or a lion. And then you compare the strongest animals on the planet, for example, like an elephant or the gorillas, animals like that, who are infinitely stronger than us, and they are vegetarian. Now, and insofar as veganism is concerned, tell me one other species that drinks the milk of another species. Tell me one species that continues to drink its mother's milk when it's an adult. We're the only ones. So I think these people are so disingenuous that they insist on missing the real point. And at the same time, I don't know if you've ever read Barbara Tuchman's book, In Search of Folly. She talks about folly, she defines it as being acting against our own best interests. Well, let's just consider the amount of forest depletion that is caused. It's 3 times as much as the damage as the recent global financial crisis. Zoonotic diseases now from factory farms now threaten a planned pandemic which greater than the one that wiped out half of Europe. And meat and dairy, as you know, is killing us with cancers, osteoporosis, hypertension, diabetes. The United States used to be a very rich and successful country, but today, because of their very bad diets, Medicare has already bankrupted that country. They would need $8 trillion invested in treasury bills just to pay the interest, and they've got precisely zero. Laddus, as they would say, nothing. They could shut down every school, university, Army, Navy, Air Force, Homeland Security, FBI, and CIA, and they still will not have enough money to meet their doctor bills. And these are absolute facts. And of course, you would know this very well in India in particular. Water is the new oil. Nations will soon be going to war over it.
Yep.
Underground aquifers that took millions of years to fill are now running dry.
Absolutely.
I drilled my first bore well when I was a teenage Boy Scout in a place called Bunragutta, not far from Bangalore.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
we struck sweet water at 80 feet.
Wow.
Today, and one of the projects that have been funding for many years is an orphanage, for want of a better word, near Yellowhunker.
Okay.
At 800 feet, we're sucking mud. In China, at 3,000 feet, the drill head is still dry. Now, you would be appalled if 10 jumbo jets crashed every day with
Right.
no survivors. Will the same number of children die every day through water-related diseases?
That's right.
So why do I even mention water? Because it takes 50,000 liters of water to produce 1 kilo of beef. It takes 1,000 liters of water to produce 1 liter of milk. And a dairyman gets 24 cents a liter for it. What a preposterously stupid industry.
Absolutely.
This is Mad Hatter economics on lifestyle. Now, today, for example, 1 billion people are hungry. 20 million people will die this year from malnutrition. Cutting meat by only 10% will feed 100 million people, and going vegan will end malnutrition forever. And that is why I say that veganism is the Swiss Army knife for a sustainable future. It
Right.
solves our ethical, our economic, our financial, our water, our health problems, and most importantly for me, it ends animal cruelty forever.
That's such a convincing argument. I'm so surprised that still our education system is working against it. And as you rightly said, we are trying to, no, the system is created for self destruction.
Yes, 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 I agree.